Now you've seen them on TV. We are here on the grounds at the 2023 Mecum auctions in Monterey. I'm here with Dave Majors. Thank you for inviting us.
Well, welcome to the 15th edition of Mecum Monterey, and we're truly honored to have Porsche Club of America joining us here for what's going to be another exciting, thrilling day for Mecum auctions.
Now yesterday was Werks Reunion and they had a few Porsches come through, and I think they went for a very strong money.
Yesterday we sold one particular collection, 17 Ferraris and I think 11 Porsches in the collection, and I would say the collection of 11 Porsches were better received than anything else in the auction all day, including the Ferraris. They did extremely well.
And today is day 2 of the auction, and we're going to take you with some Mecum staff and see some behind the scenes of what's going on here, as well as seeing some great Porsches.
Be sure to log into your YouTube account, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video.
It's the flares of an 80s 911 that got me started down the path of Porsche ownership. Now this car here is quite special, Manny.
1 year only, the 911 Speedster. They bring back the Speedster name from the 356, which ended in 58 with the 911. This was a big deal when it came out. Speculators took these things well over $100,000 as soon as they came out. They made a little bit under $2,100. Like you said, turbo look body, turbo transmission, regular engine of a 3.2, 5-speed, but it had that turbo body and the cut down windshield and top. The rare ones are the narrow body ones, which they only had in Europe.
So the underpinnings and the mechanicals of this is just like a standard 3.2.
Just like a turbo look.
But you've driven one of these. Is it different to drive?
The driving experience is the same, a little bit shorter. Wind through your hair if you have hair. But the really weird thing and almost useless thing is the sun visors, because they're only about this tall, so the sun visors don't do much to cut out the sun.
And I think it's quite an exercise to put the top up.
Actually, the top was considered experimental. I think they gave Porsche the excuse for a top that sometimes wasn't the easiest to put on. And yes, it's very complicated to put on.
Manny, here's one of my dream cars. I've always wanted a 356. This is a 1963. It's known as a B Coupe.
B, and it's actually the most affordable of the 356s because it was the most popular, most produced. It was a big jump from the 356A, even the pre-A. You know, every generation they got more and more refined in the car building and the features that they had. This one has the S motor, which is like the midline. You had the Super 90, and of course you had the Carrera engine, which was essentially a 4-cam race engine. But you have 4-wheel drum brakes. Easy way to spot with the Bs, at least starting with the Bs, is these cool quarter windows that we wish we had on our cars today, because you just open them up, twist it a little bit, and you can have airflow directly to it.
Air conditioning.
Yes, and it was actually very effective before climate control came to be.
Now, how about the hubcaps? Are those a telltale sign as well?
So a lot of times you have a little what looks like a nipple, and that's holding the hub because it's still drum brakes. The C's were flat because they used disc brakes, and that's an easy spotter's guide. The A's, which are probably the most beautiful shape, such a simple shape, didn't have the quarter windows, so they were pretty easy to spot too. But once you see an A, you can't mistake, and you know what an A looks like.
Now, have you driven a B before? What's it like to drive?
It's actually very civilized. The drum brakes are bigger than, let's say, a Beetle. So it stops very well. As long as everything's tuned in properly and adjusted properly, it stops very well. You're talking 75 horsepower, maybe on the standard, so it's not a ton of horsepower, but it doesn't weigh a lot, and for a nice cruise, a great drive, it's a great car to have.
What's interesting is there's all makes and models here, and if you look at another 1963, say an American-made car, it's almost double the size of a 356.
Yeah, that's really amazing to see what Porsche was doing, and then what the U.S. manufacturer is doing. Of course, Germany was still recovering from things after the war, so they didn't have the luxuries where the Americans had with the big roads and the big cars, and I think this must have looked almost space age with the aerodynamic shape it had.
And what I love most about these 356s is, to me, they're a work of art, but still they can motor along on today's roads at the speed limits, and you still feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah, so many of them that were made are still on the road today operating.
Here we have behind us a trio of air-cooled 911s. Let's start with the one next to me here in Guards Red with big bumperettes, which means it's a
US spec car.
And it also has red tail lenses.
Yeah, now these are things that you can modify So it's not always a given that these are what these cars are. But yeah, most people who leave their car stock, you'll notice the big bumpers and the all red taillights.
Now this one here is an 89 911 turbo, but we also refer to them as 930s.
Yeah, and 89 is the last year of this body style, the G body style of the turbo, and they would not come out of a car in 1990. You had to wait to 91 before the turbo would come out again.
And what's unique about an 89 911 turbo has to do with the transmission.
Yeah, 5-speed. There were some people that were making 5-speeds or customizing a 4-speed, but it's the first year they came out with a 5-speed transmission or turbo.
Let's take a look at this white turbo. Notice the bumperettes are smaller and the tail lenses they contain amber.
Yeah, what they call the Euro tail lights, which, you know, anyone can buy and put on their US spec car if they want to. Same thing with the bumper.
And they have these unique reflectors as well.
Yeah, that's a giveaway that this is a Euro gray market car. So when you get gray market cars, you have to be careful that all the paperwork's been done and it can be federalized. If you're lucky, it got federalized, but nothing was done to the car. So emissions stayed the same. They didn't put the safety updates. They kept the car light and the way why people wanted the European cars, because they were getting better models than the US customers.
Speaking of better models, on the spec sheet of this car, they actually call this a 911 Turbo S.
Yeah, so this is before Porsche really got big into the whole exclusive program. They had a Sonderwunsch program, but they had this S model, which was a really customizable 930.
Now the one behind us here never even made it to the United States. This car was actually delivered to Japan, and it has two very unique letters after Carrera.
Yeah, RS, Rennsport. These are the cars they were building to be able to qualify to race in certain series. So they had to sell a certain amount of cars. So essentially they were building Cup cars with nice interiors, street-worthy, but under the underpinnings, it was essentially a Cup car.
So not only are these race cars built for the street, but they're also limited production. They're now finally old enough to be able to be brought into the United States.
And the worst part, they were never sold in the US. So we had to sit back, read the magazines, drool, and wish we could buy these cars in the US. But finally, because of the 25-year rule, they are starting to pop up. This one's from Japan, we believe, right? Yeah, so they're bringing it over to the US. But if you see a Carrera RS, you see a lot of copies because these wings are sold in the aftermarket. But you see a real one, that's a unicorn.
And that's what we had to do. From a distance, we were like, is it truly a real RS? You know, you take a look and you see the Speedline wheels. You look at the etching to see if they're legit. You look at the interior. The arrow can be copied pretty easily, but the interior, it's much harder to replicate.
And the next step up is the Carrera RS Club Sport. And that was basically, they even sold you a roll bar, and it's all set up to go racing right from the factory.
So here we have a long hood 911. It's an earlier model, but it's not the very first early models, which has a shorter wheelbase. This is a long wheelbase car.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, what got my attention when I saw this in line ready to go into the auction block was the rear deck lid, and I could see the lettering, and I said it can only be one thing: Sportomatic.
Sportomatic, and we did a video recently talking about what it's like to drive a Sportomatic, meaning you shift like a manual, but there's only two pedals, and the way it engages and releases the clutch is through the fact that your hand touches the shift knob.
Yeah, it's not an automatic.
Nope.
You have to switch the gears, but it's a series of servos that switches the gears. So like you said, no clutch pedal, all done with a stick shift, but you have to shift the gears.
So this is a Targa, but it also has the 2.2 liter engine?
Correct. Yep. And after that, they made the 2.4 in '73, but the 2.2 was '71, and it was a big jump from the 2 liter.
So what's it like to drive something like this?
Well, you know, I'm dying to drive a Sportomatic. I've never driven a Sportomatic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as far as driving a early car, we've done videos on it. They're touring cars. They're not the new 991s or even a 997. It's a touring car. You're talking about 130 to 150 horsepower for the T's. It was a car for its time. It was pretty fast, but it wasn't a speed demon.
And these are definitely like time capsules, and I love how when you open the door and the first waft, they all kind of smell the same.
Oh, yes, that's either the German leather or the German vinyl. But the cool thing is you got to actually close a Targa top for the first time.
I did, and it's an accordion. It's kind of a puzzle piece to put together. Now, a lot of people complain that Targas aren't they don't seal very well. But that usually means that the target top is not in good condition, because when it is in good condition, the seals are right, it actually is a pretty good system.
Yeah, when Porsche updated this with their newer models, they brought back that look. But the newer ones do not leak, which I told Porsche, the old Targa owners that are complaining that there's no wind noise and there's no leaking on the new ones. But yes, you can get your target tops reconditioned to where they're fairly airtight and watertight.
Now here's a car that's not only near and dear to your heart because it's a 914, but also because of the livery.
Yeah, this is the famous Brumos 914-6 GT, but this is actually, I hate to call it a replica, but let's call it a tribute. But Brumos built 5 of these for their customers, I think in the 90s, that were using their winning original 914-6G. They built tributes so their customers could go vintage racing as well. And it's the car that won the first ever IMSA race at VIR.
So this car originally was raced during the 70s?
Would have been like 1970, I think 71.
And later they built these cars for their customers, but it was like a Brumos dealership build, not some third-party company.
Yeah, Brumos even puts on the back of their cars, even the one that came from the factory, made in Jacksonville, because they take it and they make it even better than Porsche delivered it to their customers, and that's why Brumos was the one that everyone was chasing.
Now I'm going to give you a chance to share with people why you love a 914, because sometimes people feel like 914s are left unloved.
It's, the street cars, they're under 100 horsepower, but they're a blast to drive. They're a little bit over 2,100 pounds in weight. The target top comes off. It's a Porsche 5-speed transmission, Porsche front suspension. It has a VW-based 4-cylinder engine that Porsche popped up and took it up to 95 horsepower. Anyone who has a 914 will tell you how much fun they are, and they're hard to find good ones for sale now.
A fun factoid, obviously this is a mid-engine car, but many people don't realize a car of the same era, or a 911 of the same era, is actually narrower than a 914.
Yeah, and that's something that Porsche has learned now, is that you got to make things wider and longer to make them faster.
So here's a Porsche that typically you would either see at the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart or maybe at Werks Reunion.
Right.
But here it is available for sale, possibly to the highest bidder.
The 718 RSK. And what's unique about this one is it's a center seater. Now here's the thing, Porsche made it so it's possible in a few hours to convert it back to left-hand steering. So they built about 6 of these, and the reason they built it was because Porsche wanted to compete in Formula 2. So they moved to the center steering wheel, and they could compete in Formula 2, which they did fairly successfully with this car.
Now this is an all aluminum vehicle, and what kind of powertrain does it have?
The Furman 4-cam engine.
Oh, the mighty
now,
4-cam.
Exactly. Came out in '54, and by now they've really refined this engine, and it is the engine to have.
Now, there's only so many people, one, that own a 4-cam engine, but even less people that probably can even work on a 4-cam engine.
Yeah, it's a lot of bevels and gears, and there isn't the belts that we have or chains that we have in modern cars. So it's an engine that can cost up to $400,000.
Now, what were the cars that this car was racing against like?
Well, these were the giant killers. So they was beating the cars in its class, all the English cars. It was going after the bigger cars, the Ferraris, the Jaguars, the Aston Martin big engine, high horsepower cars. So by now Porsche was known as the giant killer.
So this RSK is getting ready to go across the block. So we hope you enjoyed a little preview of all the cars that are available here at the 2023 Monterey auction with Mecum. Now, Lee, I can't tell you how many times I'm up late at night or early in the morning watching Motor Trend, seeing what happens in the tent. But here we're on the fairgrounds today in Monterey, and of course we naturally gravitate to the Porsches because I know you're a Porsche fan as well.
Absolutely.
But share with our members like what's going on right now as you prepare the day for the auction.
Okay, so we're here at Mecum Auctions in Monterey. It's a fantastic facility, a little bit different than what we typically do because we are outside here on this golf course. We have beautiful cars, and it's little typical overcast for Monterey, but it's a great venue to do this. So it's early in the morning here. People are kind of milling around. We're getting ready to start an auction, and we will, put a couple of hundred cars across the block today that range from all different kinds of marks. We obviously have some very special Porsches here that we're happy to run by, and I personally love to watch them and see what they are. I love to see cars like this 914 race car behind us that I've known for many, many years.
And I love the fact that you can walk up to it and kind of poke around and see it. I mean, what level of access does a person have when they're coming to an auction and see a car like that? Is there someone that can tend to it, or they just have to do the research themselves?
Yeah, not only do we encourage people, but we want them to do as much research as they can. And that's everything from walking up to the car. If they want to start the car, they can. Depending upon the car, we'll get a lot manager to help them. The only thing we don't allow people to do is go drive them on the property for a lot of obvious reasons why you wouldn't want that to happen. But you have full access to the car, to the documentation that's with the car. So we want people to be as informed as they can possibly be when they make a decision to bid on a car.
Now we see the final product as it kind of comes across the stage. Here you see it as it's arrived, you can inspect it. But before it even lands in Monterey or any other auction, there's a process before that to qualify it to get here.
There is. If you're a consignor, if you wanted to sell a car here, we would be in touch with our consignment staff. Immediately you would be followed up with about all the documentation on the car, including photographs of VIN numbers and anything that can identify exactly what the car is. We put that all into a database along with the information about the car, everything that we have, whether it's concours that it's won or anything else that we can verify. And then when the car shows up here, it goes through a check-in process. That check-in process is handled by VIN inspectors who will go and physically verify what we already know and find anything else about the car. And if there's an issue with it, sometimes we'll have things that, a VIN number's wrong, it doesn't match a title, it's a 5 instead of an S. Those kind of things happen all the time as these cars have changed hands, sometimes over 50 years. So we'll make those corrections. Sometimes we have to have a law enforcement officer come in and actually do a change of the VIN right on the spot.
So that's from the seller side. Now for me, I'd be on the buyer side. So how do I get ready to put my paddle up in the air?
So first of all, you can go online and you can do the research that we have available there. You can always call a consignment agent and say, what do we know about this car? Is the documentation available? When you actually physically come to the auction, you're welcome to poke around. Every car here is accessible, even the ones that are in our what we call the glass house, some very exclusive cars. We don't want everybody in the world kind of flipping the doors, but somebody would be there to help you to go through that car to identify whatever you need to.
So let's say I'm interested in this, or maybe one of the 356s there in the background. How does the payment process work for someone? Like, do I have to bring a wad of cash, or?
You don't. No, you don't need any cash. In fact, people do come with cash. We have folks show up with a sack full of hundreds, and while we wouldn't encourage you to walk around with a bunch of cash in your pocket, but no, we have every facility that you can want to be able to purchase a car here with every kind of bank transfer available to you. We do financing here, which is my primary role at Mecum, is to help people facilitate their purchase if they want to do financing. So we do. Sorry, I get distracted when I hear motors
nice
rolling.
Exhaust. No, I totally get it.
But no, we have the payment process. I mean, it's pretty sophisticated at this point. It's easy. If you want to buy a car, Mecum has made every facility available for you to bring your car here, transport-wise, to buy the car, to finance the car, to send it, do all of the registration, the titling we do on site for the most part.
And I've been through the behind the scenes tour a couple years ago, and what I found fascinating is literally you have like what I call a DMV behind the back of house, where once the transaction or the bid's gone down, like there's actually a title. You have all the titles.
Yep.
You assign them. Like when it's sold, it's truly sold.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very interesting to folks like banking partners that we've brought in here, when they walk in and they see what you just described, which is effectively a mobile F&I office that you would see in as big a dealership as you've ever been in. And we move it every 3 weeks, and it is slick as can be, and they really get it done. We not only check every car in, so it goes from a transfer. If you're the seller, you bring your everything in, you put it into what kind of no man's land, so all the information, the title and everything, and then when that car is purchased, that now has to go through a second settlement process to the buyer.
To the buyer,
So
yeah.
we do that twice. So if there's 1,000 cars on the lot, we do that 2,000 times in 3 or 4 days.
That's amazing. Well, I know you've got a lot to do. I wish you the best of luck today.
Thank you.
Manny and I are gonna go window shopping and share with all the members all the wonderful Porsches that you have on property.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Phil.
you.
Good seeing you.